That's what I'm talking about. Guess what time it is, Nick?
Is it time for the Rings of Power?
Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Well, my name's Trip. I'm here with my friend Nick Polk, and you may be saying to yourself, if you just happen to be on my feed at this given time, I wonder if we're going to talk about philosophical theology or maybe religion and science or something like that. No. There's only one text that is sacred in deep ways for me. That's not in the Bibbidi Bob Bible, and that's Lord of the Rings. And Amazon, in an attempt to cover over a multitude of just extractive economic and ecological damage, just decided to drop a bunch of money into making a TV show where the second age of Middle Earth.
They won sustainable production awards or something, so it's totally fine. It's totally fine.
And that would make me smile if I hadn't recently had Ted DeLay on to talk about his new book on green offsets as a kind of a scam and all that kind of thing. But nonetheless, we're here because it is getting close. It's getting close to kickoff time, Nick. It's getting close to kickoff time. Season 2, Rings of Power. I just while lifting weights past week, I rewatched it. I think I've watched it 5 times since the original. Well, I don't know how many times I watched it when we did episodes through all the episodes last time. We did live streams. So I probably watched it twice before we did those. And then since then, I've rewatched it 3 times and skipped to the battle scene sometimes when I'm swinging some kettlebells just to get pumped.
Oh, hell yeah.
Or maybe Galadriel riding a horse.
I mean, especially if you're doing cardio. I mean, I know when I'm doing cardio, I need Galadriel space on that horse to send me.
So we are going to talk kind of like setting up for this season, stuff coming out of season 1, talk about things related to season 2, mostly just to try to get our groove back. Got to get our groove back because we're going to be hanging out on Monday nights the same time next week after the first 3 episode premiere.
Oh yeah.
3.
Oh yeah.
You know what 3 episodes is equal, Nick?
I don't know.
1 extended edition of the original trilogy movies.
So true. So this is just a normal night, really. For the diehard Tolkien fans, they're like, whatever. A night of 1 extended edition, easy. Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited. Many moons ago, when they announced this show on Twitter, I was just like, I already do podcasting a lot. I want to talk with someone who has similar nerdy interests in the academic religion space, but also is more nerdy than me in Tolkien. And then you responded to the tweets, and here we are.
It really does feel like so long ago, and also like yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, Tolkien just brings the people together. I mean, even J.D. Vance likes Lord of the Rings. And so just like the Bible, you can really love a text and theoretically read it and get it completely wrong.
Yeah. Our mutual, friend Leah Robinson says, you know what? If you're part of a faith, people can make it bad. And unfortunately, there are people who make Tolkien bad. Yeah. But we're going to make it good. We're going to focus on the good stuff.
It makes me want to just ask that question,
Have you heard of Sauron?
Ooh, that's right. Have you heard of Sauron? And that, my dear friends, is the voice of who I really think is going to be the breakout star of season 2.
Oh, yeah.
Waldreg.
Oh, yeah.
People were like, where is Waldreg in the first few trailers? But it's not until the last trailer you even get him. Where do you get him? Creeping up in the back, in the face, in the showdown between Sauron and Adar. And I'm like, yeah, because I think we know who's walking out of that. 3 walk in, Waldreg walks out. That's how it goes. Maker of Mordor.
He's armored up, dude. Like, he looks like he's ready to stand on some business, as the kids say these days.
Yeah. I love myself some Waldrick. And then when you shared with me the story about the actor, and it just got even cooler.
Yeah. Tripp sent me this article that interviewed the actor, and I can't remember his name, but he's Australian.
Yeah.
And apparently during the filming of the first season, he was creating like weird art, having like terrible headaches, and found out that he had a brain tumor. And they had this extended surgery, and it was like a really difficult surgery. And then it was successful. And now he's just found this like revitalization and excitement for life. And he's creating art, and he's in bands. And also, Tripp sent this to me. I found out me and Waldrick have the same birthday, February 19th. So, I mean, it's just fate. It's just, it's just fate, you know?
Look, you and Waldrick.
I'm going on an adventure.
That's what's happening. Which is a great article. It's in the Sydney Morning Herald. His name's Jeff Morrell, but it's like
thanks, Cameron.
Jeff in the Geoff, you know, like where it's you're like whoa. But yeah, it's the Sydney Morning Herald. And again, if anyone in Australia happens to be friends with him, I am more than happy to email 70,000 people about my upcoming conversation with the character behind Waldrick. I'm just saying.
I keep seeing all of the, the Comic-Con and viewings or whatever, like in London and stuff, and they keep showing Elrond and Durin and Disa as they should. But also, where's Jeff Morrell? Where's Waldrick?
I don't see that because I have all those hashtags on mute. I don't want anyone to mess anything up. All right, so here we go. I have 3 things I want to ask you about for the upcoming season.
Okay.
And then we can do whatever. But
okay.
I also just want to give a shout out because I was already getting text messages. Tom Webster.
He sent me a text too.
Yeah, he's trying to edit a book while watching this. So we just want to give a shout out to Tom Webster, who will be at Theology Beer Camp, which is just a great time to tell everyone you can all come hang out with us. Theology Beer Camp, theologybeer.camp's URL, October 17th and 19th. And that's where like hundreds of people, lots of theologians and podcasters all hang out. And there's a whole stage dedicated to geek stuff. And one of the sessions is straight up Tolkien. And Craig Boyd's going to be there. Brian Zahn's going to be there. Nick's going to be dropping the mic like it's hot up in that piece. And it's just going to be exciting. I just got the proofs of the art for Theology Beer Camp where certain theologians that are coming are cast as characters at the Council of Elrond.
Stop.
Yes. So if you remind me when we get done, I'll tell you who's going to be who because I have to pull it up. Yeah, I have to pull it up. It'll take a minute. But yeah, so that's going down. But Tom works at Orbis Press, and opening night, Thursday night at Theology Beer Camp, we are having a cosplay contest. And Orbis is giving prizes for the best cosplay costumes. And so, like, you can go anywhere in geekdom you want, but they're also, but honestly, we're going Lord of the Rings style right here. And there's a whole prize just for the best Middle Earth garb. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So, shout out to Tom. That's what I'm talking about. That's what you do when you work for a publisher is you are like, how do you support high quality, progressive Catholic publishing? You are like, who's a cool Catholic? You want to know who is pioneering critiques of the extractive mechanistic system of capitalism and the way it pillages the planet before it was hype, before Papa Francis drops that encyclical? J.R.R. Tolkien. That's right. He was scouring the Shire and junk before it was cool. And so I'm just saying that's happening at Theology Beer Camp. All right. Okay. So first question, Nick, and you have to think back to this moment.
Okay.
We're getting ready for this season. We have had Brer McCreary, who is writing the music for it dropped some jams.
So many jams.
And I've listened to the soundtrack twice in the last couple of days since it came out. Now, I got pumped each time they dropped a song. So when you think of one, he dominated the first season. Soundtrack, I've been listening to it since then.
Yeah.
When you think of the new jams, and this is a really hard task, which one did you get most pumped about when you heard it?
I have listened to it a couple times, and I've kind of had it in the background while I'm doing lesson planning or when my students are doing independent work, because I'm playing them Rings of Power soundtrack and, of course, the original Lord of the Rings film trilogy soundtrack. I haven't gotten to the animated Hobbit, which I need to. It's probably, honestly, even still, when, like, I think it was like the second track or third track was the Damrod track with Meshuggah, the metal. Like, it's not only, but in this moment, only Bear McCreary can bring Meshuggah, who also has done stuff for Doom, and brings orchestra and metal and makes it feel like Middle Earth. It's so freaking epic. And for the metalheads out there, I just want to be like, please come enjoy Damrod, enjoy Meshuggah in Middle Earth.
And for people that don't know who Damrod is, like, why would a soundtrack all of a sudden say we got to go metal in season 2 for one particular baddie?
Yeah. So we have been, I think even the first images that were released in Vanity Fair, I think, for season 2, we get this huge troll who's like, who's really buff. He's huge. And he is going to be a key figure, it looks like, in Adar's army, potentially, maybe Sauron's. But as we get later and we see trailers and we see Damrod just being in battle, walking in the backgrounds, taking a Rondir head on, and Bear McCreary's like, hey, guess what? This Damrod guy, we wrote a song for him for basically his last battle. And yeah.
No, it's pretty crazy. I got pumped with that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, and Damrod is named after the troll is named after a ranger during the Lord of the Rings, who is a descendant of Numenor, who hangs out with Aragorn, just for frame of reference.
Oh, deep cut. The Tom Bombadil song is pretty wonderful. Rufus Wainwright sings it. If you were one of those people that was like, why couldn't we have had 30 more minutes in Peter Jackson's version just to go hang out with Bombadil? Well, apparently it's happening. I hope it's good. And the music, though, like, it's so good. But when the whole soundtrack came out, I want you to know, I just turned it on and I'm like on the deck just doing my work. And when Shelob's Lair tune comes on, that creeped me out. Now, I find spiders just creepy AF. Yeah. They creep me out. I have to, like, not let anyone see me react to spiders. I got to, like, pull up I'm like, no, you're the dad. You can't squeal and run away. So I've, like, learned how to handle it. Kind of like poop. When you become a parent, you got to learn how to handle other people's poop. It's like a requirement. I've dealt with, but it just starts with this, like string thing, and I was like, nah, I can't do this. So I haven't listened to it multiple times. I just know that when Shelob, that's that big nasty spider, for all of you that don't know, in Lord of the Rings that gets Frodo, there's going to be an interaction with 1,000-year younger Shelob, and the theme song, it's in my nightmares. I just can't even.
I love Bear McCreary's, like, villain soundtrack, and Blair on X has said that he's excited for Rory Kinnear playing Tom Bombadil, and accurate. He is amazing. I think he's going to be awesome as well. But when the Sauron track was released with Galadriel track for season 1, I had the Sauron track on repeat for even after the full album came out, and that was one that I would like play in my car like on the way to work, which is just that's weird. And I would get like pumped up to Sauron and strings, but I need to listen to it more in depth, because I'm sure there's probably some connections like through like music theory. Y'all should, Will Sherwood, who's the education secretary for the Tolkien Society, and I think a musician, has done like deep dive analysis into Bear McCreary's stuff, especially for season 1. I don't know if he's done the same for season 2, but I'm sure it just offers you insight into like, oh, how do they intermingle these themes with music and callbacks to Peter Jackson, and he does it masterfully, and it's so fun.
Yeah. All right. Here's the second thing I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
All right. So everyone that's been watching the trailers and such, they know there's going to be a nasty siege going on. Jung's going to go down. Also, they're like, whoa, this one's got a little higher rating than last year. It's going to get a little bit more mature.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe it's just intimacy coordinator for extra horse riding scenes. But if that's not it, if there's something that's going to go down in this season, maybe around the siege, like as someone who Silmarillion's their favorite, and they are going to be telling that story without like directly telling that story, what do you hope got them to have to raise that rating level up when you think of all the things that could be going down in a Region?
Man, there's one in particular for the deep cut fans out there, and I don't want to spoil it for people who aren't as familiar, and they'll encounter it for the first time and rings in the show. But all I have to say is just one name: Celebrimbor. That's all I have to say. That will what goes down with Celebrimbor and in the Sack of a Region is it by itself is alone to bring that rating up.
What I hear you saying is that when it goes to what could give the rating, you want to plant your flag as to who's involved, but you don't want to name exactly what banner's unfurled.
Well
for
done.
how it goes down.
Exactly. For people, just call back to the Silmarillion, because people are like, I mean, we've seen the Peter Jackson films, and there's orc blood, and people get their heads cut off. But in the Silmarillion, especially with Morgoth, what is it? No, yeah. When one of the battles, I think when Feanor dies, he ends up getting pounded by Balrogs with their like maces and hammers, and it's like, yeah, he was basically crushed in a pool of his own blood, and Tolkien's able to do that. And so the Sack of a Region, we're gonna see that level of first age violence that maybe not as present in the Third Age.
Well,
yeah.
I'm just saying later when y'all find out, if they go there, if they get as dark as the story gets, there's
I think in the age. Oh yeah,
gonna be some parents that are like, what? That's what happened?
Yeah. And I think they've talked about trying to keep it like family levels, but I think in the age of post Game of Thrones, and it's TV where like you can literally do with it whatever you want, that I think that there's, especially in the US, there's less stomach churning over a higher levels of violence. And so I think we're going to see some of that.
All right, new character showing up this season, Círdan.
Oh yeah.
Now, he has a split-second appearance if you've only read the movies at the end in the Greyhaven scene. But he's kind of like one of the most epic elves. So knowing that those that haven't spent a lot of time reading the text are getting to meet one hardcore like deeply committed to the larger vocation of the elves in Middle Earth. A new character. Like, what should people know about him?
So his origins are kind of a mystery, but we do know that he is one of the oldest, if not the oldest elf, I think, recorded in the Legendarium as far as like canonical stuff goes. And if you look at the small cameo that he makes in the Peter Jackson films, and then of course the actor who's doing it now, you'll notice that Peter Jackson's Círdan, no beard. Our Rings of Power Círdan, beard. How's that possible? For some of the nerds that are like, elves can't have beards. Like, even some of the people who are like, you know what, Numenorians aren't even supposed to have beards. Okay, some people have even argued that. And they're like, I love Viggo Mortensen. Total babe. But shouldn't have a goatee. But Círdan, being as old as he is just that old where it's like eventually elves are going to start producing facial hair, apparently, white facial hair. But Círdan establishes the Grey Havens, and he becomes like a key person as far as like key elven battles in the Second Age, and even his place in the Third Age. But specifically with the Rings of Power, Círdan is going to be one of the wielders, the first wielders of one of the Rings of Power, which is the Ring Narya, which is the Ring of Fire, which is supposed to kindle the hearts of people. And you know, the elves use the rings for preservation, but they all have their own like specific little niches. And Narya is like that, which eventually he passes down to Gandalf when Gandalf shows up, because Círdan's like, hey, I'm kind of chilling in the Grey Havens, taking people back to Valinor. And building boats, you know, are they as good as Vingalot? I don't know. I don't think so. Probably not. But yeah, so Círdan is just, he's helped. I'm trying to remember the battle. I think if there's any people on here who are super nerdy who know or can look it up, it's either the sack of Eregion that Círdan comes to help, or later there's another battle that Elrond leads at a later time, I think, and Círdan comes and basically saves the day. But Círdan, one of those people that comes around, and he's kind of the Deus Ex Machina for a lot of that Second Age stuff. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I like about him, and why it makes sense that Tolkien would have a certain affection for him, is he's someone who passes on glory to continue to serve.
Yeah.
And so he facilitates all these elves going to the west, not just in running it and building the ships, but that's how he ends up being, among the oldest in all of Middle Earth. He's facilitated so many going, and he's on the last ship, and that wasn't like something he sought out to do. It was a task given to him. He's also bros with Gil-galad, who is going to rock a spear in this season. So I know that if you've watched Peter Jackson things, everyone knows how nasty on TV an elf can get with a bow. They can go all sorts of ways, but we haven't seen like crazy spear skills. So
we're not ready for it. We're really not ready for it. I don't remember the elven name off the top of my head, but it means like piercing ice or ice fang or something like that.
Yeah.
And people like Tolkien's like, guess what? Gil-galad, when he gets a spear at, one of the most badass elves of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's like that one, what's the guy's name that's in The Last of Us and Narcos?
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, when he has the spear battle in Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah,
it's gonna be like that.
He's the Viper. Yes.
Yeah, except that he's gonna fight a giant troll who's got his own metal theme song. So I'm just saying, I'm optimistic. All right, so which of the storylines are you most excited to pick up?
I'm really pumped to at first. So like throughout the season, because we talked how much we love Elrond and Durin and Disa, and of course I think that's one of the like unifying aspects of the show, that even people who are like, I'm not lukewarm, or even like, I don't really like the show, they're like, my favorite part, Elrond, Disa, and Durin.
Yeah.
So they're probably they've been on the forefront of my mind. But with these new trailers, I'm kind of ready to see Elrond come into his own, as we saw him as Aeglos. Thank you, Marvin, is the spear of Gil-galad. And but Elrond by himself is just going to turn into this awesome general, and he becomes a leader in the Second Age. And with this compressed timeline, we're probably going to see the founding of Rivendell in the next couple years. So, yeah. But what about you? What's your number one, dude?
Well, I mean, just even thinking about how much the relationship of Durin and Elrond was just it was just good. When I think about this season, there's really only one thought that comes to my mind.
Give me the meat and give it to me raw.
And I wanted that. And they just told me way in advance, right there in the trailer, is happening. When Durin says, "We go for our friends," and well, if we're trying not to ruin it, if you've read what's going to happen at the battle, then there's a time, in battles where you want your friends to show up. And when you're in a pinch and there's some orcs all up in the business and you want some help, there's nothing quite like some nasty dwarves coming in swinging axes. That's what I'm saying. And if orc getting swapped down by dwarfs is set up by a Doran for our friends chant, I just don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'll probably just be texting you and then rewatch it the next day. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. Yeah. So I'm very excited about that. One of the other things that there are two things, because I just recently rewatched it again, and I watched it over the summer, when we were like, oh, well, we should do this again. And then I was like, well, now I've kind of forgot it, so I should rewatch it right before new season. And here's the thing. I actually think the writing was better every time I've rewatched it.
Yeah, me too. I really did. I think that we were seeing it for the first time. It was kind of post-COVID. We're still kind of in that weird place of is it going to be good? Whatever. And like you said, in revisiting the story, some of the dialogue, I will be there. It's not my favorite, but ultimately the writing, and as far as dialogue and storyline, way better as I've revisited it. Yeah.
So, and this is something on this last watch, because the time before, I was fascinated about Halbrand, ultimately Sauron. I'm like, first time you're like, what? Oh, okay. He's hot. How's this going to work? And by the time you get to the end of the season, you're like, oh, okay. Then you're looking now that I know that what's up with the stranger and what's up with Halbrand, this is going to go. And then this time in between, and then having rewatched it twice recently, the number of scenes where Halbrand's line is telling the exact truth, and Galadriel hears it in the complete wrong way, is wild. And he is not deceptive by ever telling a lie. It's always just telling an element of the truth, or being so brutally honest she can't contemplate it. And if when I rewatched it, not the newest time, the time before, I said, I wonder if he thought she was in on the whole thing. And it was just this her unconscious is oh, I know who this is, and now we're going to do this thing, because she basically coaxes him right into taking the the status as king, and and
Right.
setting everything up. And if you take him as genuine in the first 4 episodes and then going like, I think she knows, she mightn't even know and wants me to do this, it goes. Yeah, exactly. Brandon in the chat. Sauron's related to the serpent Genesis, who straight up only tells the truth, right? And this is one of those things when you look at the Genesis story in chapter 3, Adam tells Eve, God said, don't touch it or eat it. That's not what God said. God said, don't eat it. And then the serpent's like, check this junk out. You know what's going to happen. You're going to know things. Like, you just imagine her sitting there like touching. Oh, nothing happened. Oh, and it sets this whole thing. It's like precisely telling the truth and telling it slant allows someone that has a desire in them that they don't want to acknowledge then to tell the rest of the story. And I was surprised, like after I got fascinated with it on this last time I watched it, how those scenes that the first time I rewatched it knowing it was Sauron, I'm like, what is his existential crisis? Because in my head, he's just always already the big bad.
Right.
Right? Well, what happens if he has this experience after Morgoth and he's like, oh, we do want to heal this. And he's not like chaos agent of terror baddie like Morgoth, but it's like, I want to help things out. Like I got a plan.
Right.
Like I want to usher in a nice ordered control hierarchy, but on behalf, I'm just going to do this right. Going to bring peace to the earth. And obviously the way you do it is you just bow the knee. And I was just so surprised how you can read everything where neither Galadriel or Halbrand characters are lying, and they could both be mutually deceiving each other and never wanting to say out loud the thing they both think the other one knows, until the boom moment in episode 8. And that just made me feel a lot better about the new season, because I was like, oh, every time I've watched it, I got more confident that it could be done well. And when I heard that in the interview where the two guys that are writing it are like, oh, we're never discussing if that story was true or not about the Mithril and and whether or not it's secretly like holding in powers and there was a battle, like we're never going to discuss that. I was like, that's great. That's great. Let's keep that in there. That's like it's like the Gnostic Gospels.
Yeah, it's apocryphal.
It's got some great material.
It's interesting, right?
But we don't have to decide if the kingdom of God is in a tree when you split it with an axe, and we don't have to ask if the Cimmerals are trapped in Mithrils because a Balrog and an elf got in a fight next to a tree,
and there was lightning or something.
Yeah. And then they triple stamp their double stamp. And then right after that, Luvatar started singing. And it just started glowing. And the Balrog took a nap until a leaf hit his face.
You saying triple stamp their double stamp just made me think of the Shocker. Sorry, everybody. I just made me think of that.
I was thinking of Dumb and Dumber. You can't triple stamp a double stamp.
I totally forgot.
Like I just imagine that story as to like you're sitting there, you're really tired, you're like, so exactly how are we going to get this Mithril thing to have this power, like to set this whole thing up? And then one of them's like, well, what if like there's like all this energy trapped in from about? Oh, that's cool. And it's at a tree. Really? Oh, who's battling? We're talking like an epic elf and a Balrog. Oh. Yeah, Balrog. And then what are they fighting over? Get this. Cimmeral. Got that big Cimmeral in her. Oh. I don't know. I mean, what are you going to do if a lightning hits a Balrog and an elf fighting around the Cimmeral? And then he's like, oh, you don't do it. He's like, you know what I'm thinking. Don't say it. Don't say it. Mithril. No. Yes, that's it. and they got so pumped they wrote it down. They're like, that's in here. And then when their friends watched it, right, and they'd already filmed the whole thing, they're like, I mean, it's just folklore. Like, who knows?
Right.
We don't know. And then their friends were like, yeah, but are we sure Waldrick made Mordor? And they're like, hell yeah, we are. Come on. Like,
Waldrick making Mordor is canon in Rings of Power. This is the Mithril is apocryphal.
Who knows? No multiple attestation up in here.
I just want to.
You can't triple stamp my double stamp.
You can't triple stamp the double stamp. This just proves our love for Waldrick also, because Waldrick takes priority over a Silmaril.
We're just trying to give dignity to the Silmaril.
Yeah,
not to get all tied up in Balrog, elfish, lightning, tree magic in the rocks. That's stuff that happens when you're playing role-playing games at a youth group lock-in at 2 a.m.
Oh, 100%.
Someone gets a nat 20 and all of a sudden they're like, and there was a lightning strike. And what happened? There happened to be Mithril made. Really? And then...
Especially if it's kids are fasting or something, then it just adds a whole different level.
Because you're fundraising for World Hunger.
Yeah, 30-hour famine. Come on now.
Oh, man. You know what happens when you get done with one of those?
Give me the meat and give it to me raw.
Oh, yeah.
All right. All right. So, all right. I have a stack of other things I wanted to ask you about, but what about you?
I'll just make a comment too.
My 3 things got long.
No, I love it. I want to just ride the Sauron thing too. I think one of the reasons why it was so off at first, why people felt weird about Halbrand and like how Sauron came to be. I think, like you said, Sauron, especially if you've only seen Lord of the Rings or watched it without reading the appendices, that you just assume that Sauron is always looming in the background. And that's just not the case. And like you said, there's even a point too where Sauron is maybe still has a level of a degree of power from the first stage. He kind of progressively loses it over time because he keeps getting his ass kicked, and he comes back weaker. But he kind of has this weird start over moment where he's kind of like building from scratch after the fall of Morgoth, and he's trying to like regroup, Balrogs and orcs and all this type of stuff, and men. And this is his story of coming up, his coming of age story. Like, he is a human character in that sense. And I think a lot of people were like, this isn't the Sauron I know. Like, yeah, it's not, because we get to him at the end there, yeah. Anyway, I just think it's masterfully done when you revisit it and understand the history of Sauron's rise to power in the Second Age. Yeah.
And I think you just got to relate to Rings of Power. It's like if you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, you're like, John's just got this whole other vibe going on. There's not like it's just completely different than the synoptics. Different outline, different interests, frame the whole thing differently. But it's in there. It's just one of the versions, and you can enjoy it all on its own. You don't have to wish it was Gospel of Luke, or Mark. And that's how I've decided I relate to Rings of Power. It's just got its own tokenology. It's like John has a higher Christology. Rings of Power has got its own tokenology, and luckily it didn't like do something crazy like quadruple stamp a triple stamp and make that crazy story about Mithril final. But it is bringing Tom Bombadil
hell yeah.
And that last year there were 3 things that we said that we wanted in season 2. And so I want to check in as to how what are you thinking is going down this season? All right. Here are the 3 things we mentioned. 1 is we wanted Tom Bombadil bonus points if Jack Black plays him. So Jack Black's not playing Tom Bombadil, but still would be an excellent casting, which Peter Jackson should listen to for like when they're going to go make what's the movie they're doing next? It's the
Minecraft
the Search for
movie.
Gollum.
Search for Gollum. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Jack Black. Yeah, Search for Gollum.
Yeah, Search for Gollum. Yeah, you can fit Jack. You can get Jack Black to play Tom Bombadil in that.
Yeah,
you got lots of story, and they probably already. Like I'm just saying, but we do have Tom Bombadil, so we know there's there. We wanted an inting, and I've seen an Entwife. I assume at least it's a feminine of center int. I don't know how this works because that's all we've seen is that one little clip.
Right.
But we were like, give me that inting because we saw a little baby int, little Groot, when the comet fell in the first season. So we're like, we want an inting, and then we were like, can we get a battle with like 1,000 people on the screen because we had the COVID restrictions and all that stuff in the first season, and we're like, come on, y'all are dropping as much money as Peter Jackson. Where's my Helm's Deep at? So those are like 3 goals, along with we hope they give nice criticism of the colonial power of Numenor before it gets wiped out. So, but that was like a more serious one. But when you're thinking inting, Bombadil, how that's going to go down and such, what's your and mega battle? How are you feeling? Like I'm optimistic.
Me too. And I hadn't even. I didn't even think to look back at the notes, our show notes from what we did before or watch previous things. But I'm just saying how, with our hopes, we're pretty, prophetic here. We've got we've got our finger on the pulse of Rings of Power in the cultural milieu of Tolkien, as it were. But I'm stoked. Everything about it. Like when they said Tom Bombadil was here, I read the article and about the interview with Rory, and I was like, in the writers, and I was like, these dudes get it. Like, whether what happents on screen, they get the character, they understand his place in Middle Earth, and I'm like, it's going to be awesome. The Ents, I honestly think that might even tie into the sack of a Region. I'm very excited, and I'm even wondering if if we're gonna see like some of the Entwives move further west from there, just because they're compressing so much of the timeline. If we're going to see the Ents and the Entwives have a part in resisting Adar or Sauron, or both, and seeing the Entwives be like, fuck this noise. We're out of here. Like, you Ents were all about this and we were chilling, and now Sauron's back and Adar and these elves are messed up. Like, we're moving out west with the hobbits. Like, we're getting out of here, And then we find out the party tree in the Shire is an Entwife that fell asleep. Yeah.
Something like that. You're like, look.
But then she gets cut down by Saruman. Oh,
yeah, because Saruman's horrible. Like, what? He can't level up going baddie. He's like double baddie already. You can't triple baddie a double baddie. If you double baddie, you become a Sauron.
The triple baddie, the double baddie.
Well, actually, if you've only watched the movie and then you read the book, you realize that he can't actually level up his baddie status.
Oh, he levels up. He levels up quite a bit.
He wasn't like just doing power politics and destroying the planet to mechanize it for warfare. He was also just like screwing with people that have no power and taking all their best pipe weed. And and I have none of that.
Long bottom leaf.
It's not for Sauron. It's not for Sauron. It's for friends. And oddly enough, what did Merry and Pippin do? They're like, well, you can have some of ours, right? When they meet him on the road back, they even offer him the leaf. And he's just like, what are you, taunting me, trying to share? And they're like,
no, we're just going to share our long
No, they're
leaf,
just
buddy.
the 2 tallest hobbits of all time about to go clean house. And They go. I recently was reading The Scouring of the Shire and forgot how hilarious Sam is when he gets back.
Oh yeah,
where he just like straight talks junk to everybody. Anyway, look at it. Evan Garcia. He's done better at me at avoiding spoilers. Tom Bombadil's in season 2. Now that's worth my finitude.
I'm a binge now.
No, yeah, you got to get ready. And actually, Evan, what you need to do is go to whatever app you use for listening, go to the soundtrack for it, and hear Rufus Wainwright sing Bear McCreary's theme song for Tom Bombadil.
I'm Tom Bombadil. Come on.
If you've read the Tom Bombadil sections in the book and said, I wanted to see what happened on screen because you knew it had to have music, and now you're sitting here and you see that you're like, oh, he does have yellow boots in here. Like you start to look at the character when he's on there, you're like, well, how's this going to go? Sometimes in the scenes you get in the trailers, he seems really serious in a number of faces. I'm like, how's this going to go? And then you listen to a song and you're like, that's what I wish I thought it sounded like. That's what it sounds like. It's kind of like, when you hear someone do a cover song of a song you've heard a lot of times, you never really liked it, and then you're like, oh, junk. Yeah. That's what I hope people do when they listen to this song, where people, those people, some humans don't know how to appreciate the Tom Bombadil chapters of Lord of the Rings. They're like, can we just get on? I want to get chased some more, buy some ring wraiths, running around on their nasty horses. I want to get to the business, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, you got to hang out with Tom and Goldberry. And he's just running around singing. He doesn't care. He's like, oh, it's a ring, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, you don't understand. He's the oldest. What's your problem? Look, he's got yellow boots on. He's got a feather in his cap. And he bombadilios all over the place. Like, he is a walking triple stamp of hype and fun. That is what Tom Bombadil is. He's so uninterested in the whole narrative of power and things. He is he's like the prankster character or the trickster character of Lord of the Rings. And that's one of the coolest things you see. And when you think of like, how does this come in if they only have rights to Lord of the Rings, you get that one bit. And when they're when they're talking to Elrond and they bring up, oh, well, the Tom Bombadil saved us from the ring wraiths. And he's like, oh, I met that guy a while ago. He's a bit weird. And, and Elrond basically gives us a little hint there. So then you're like, well, there's some story where Elrond meets Bombadil. He was still bombadilioing all up in this junk. And the moment people suggest, well, if he can just play around with the ring and doesn't care and can see you if you have it on, why don't we leave it there? Gandalf and Elrond, who know him, are like, this is a bad idea. Homeboy is so uninterested in the ring, he'll forget it and just leave it there. And like to imagine the council in a book where the entire future of Middle Earth hangs on what you do with this, and they all the people that are the major players are sitting there, and they know a guy who is older than all of them, and they know is just like, he finds our overinvestment in our particular story in our age so interesting, he'll forget that he happened to have the Ring of Power, but he will sing you some songs, and he and his wife will throw a party and make sure you have good dreams. That's what he'll do. Like he will rock the hospitality, sing some songs, and finds our anxious worries about our present age a bit of I get what you're doing. Like when Jesus does the bit like consider the lilies, Tom Bombadil put that junk in bold and was like heading 1 in font size. Oh yeah. So I just hope they get that Bombadil energy up there, where people that have never read the book are like, "What the hell is this guy doing? Where did this come from?" And he's like, "I'm a merry fellow."
I need to see some skipping and hopping. Like if this mother is not skipping and hopping, even when he gets serious, I might be a little sad. I won't lie. I will be a little sad if there's not skipping and hopping.
I hope the first time they meet him, he's a little dour, and then he finds his lady.
Ooh. I kind of like if, has gold. Okay. Now that we're getting into it. So from what we've seen, and this is totally, we don't know, there's trailers, we don't know the timeline and what they're doing. But the first images were with Bombadil with the stranger in Rune, which is way over in the east. And they're saying that Tom Bombadil has like multiple houses or whatever.
Yeah, but hanging out with one of the blue wizards.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, Tom Bombadil might be seeing, hey, what are you doing here? Because he's the oldest and he knows what the hell's been going on. And he's like, what are you doing here? The stranger, Gandalf, Palando, Alatar, the blue wizard. And he's like, there must be some real shit going on, on the east. And he just skips and hops over there singing his Merry Fellow Bombadilio song. And he gets into the forest. And like I said, maybe he runs into the Harfoots and Goldberry shows up. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Because isn't there, I can't remember when I started thinking about this, because there's one of the soundtrack things is kind of like written in a way where it sounds like it could be Goldberry. I don't know why I thought this.
Ooh.
One of the titles made me think, oh, what if they run into her and then he's just like, I ain't got time for y'all rings and whatnots, because all I got on my mind is Goldberry and the way she brings that mist.
I've got to show, and if Goldberry is not played by a thick queen, I'm going to be upset, because lots of fans will know that Magic the Gathering came out with some Lord of the Rings themed stuff, and the screen is going to be not good. Yeah, there it is. There's Goldberry, the art there, and she's a thick queen. So if Goldberry is not double C thick, I might revolt. If
you might revolt.
I might go. That's going to be my thing. I'm going to be like, listen, Mithril, Silmaril, lightning battle, Waldred creating Mordor. But
that's one thing.
But Goldberry not being incredible, not having. Anyway, I need.
You want to know a funny thing? Elgin asked me. For those who don't know, this is my 16-year-old. When we were talking about this, and he was just like, man, it's going to be really hard to have Tom Bombadil be on TV, right? Like, because if people don't know, they'll be like, is this guy on drugs?
They're going to get pissed like in Lord of the Rings when Merry and Pippin are hanging out at the in the Flotsam and Jetsam of Isengard. And everyone's like, are they smoking dope right now? What's happening?
He was like, Tom Bombadil's just high on life. And then when the song came out, I played it for him. We were driving back from where he was going to get his parking pass at the community college, because he's going to community college half the day and doing high school the other half. Dang. And we're driving back, we're turning on and stuff, and he's like, yeah, he goes, it'd be funny. He's like, if you could just pick any of the other characters in Rings of Power to break into song, who would it be and what genre? And I was just like, you need a podcast. And so this is what I want to know here. And you can't pick Waldrick, because it's obviously the correct answer is that Waldrick proceeds to do a freestyle rap and basically diss everyone but Sauron for about 40 minutes, and it's just filthy nasty. He's just walking around Middle Earth taunting. But
it's just the scene from 8 Mile, except it's freaking Waldrig just arms
dropping.
in the air. Just
But if any of the characters this season was to pull a Tom Bombadil out of nowhere, where the people that know Tom Bombadil feel as weird, right, as if you're reading the book the first time and you've watched the movies, you're like, what is up with the merry fellow dancing and singing around, talking to trees? Like, what is up with this guy? If they made a character as like a key shift as Tom Bombadil in the show, who is it that decides they're just breaking out in song? What's the genre? And I
mean, the sky's the limit. You know, at this point, we've got Damrod and metal. We've got freaking I'm Tom Bombadil, you know, indie folk. Man.
All right. I have two options for you. Why you think?
Okay.
All right. A Isildur, really intense emo song.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Where because last we see, you know, he and his horse, they got knocked over. He gets left. He's alone. So he's probably going to be wandering with his horse, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, and his like greasy hair is like sitting there. He's got some soot on his face. And you're like, whoa, homeboy's got some angst up in here. And
the
he's got
ashes are just falling like black eye makeup.
Yeah. This all of a sudden looks like the Black Parade music video, but it's a Isildur on his horse. I was really amused by this question, Nick. I spent a little too much time thinking about it. The other option I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay. Malva, who's the Harfoot that took over when Caddick or Haddock or what's it, the guy leading the Harfoots. I think it's Haddock.
Oh. Yeah.
Haddock. Something with an ick at the end. Sadek dies. And then it's like, who's going to lead? She doesn't even know how to use the maps at the end of it. And then like Poppy was like, it's upside down. She was like, oh, I guess it is. There's lots of climbing and whatever for the next 2 weeks. And she was like, it's downhill and there's no trolls. And she reads the map from Malva. What, cause you know how they're always just like, no one walks alone. I can do that. And so the first time she does the big gathering where they tell the stories of all the Harfoots that have passed and died, you know, and they like retell their stories before they begin their migration. They all get together. And then all of a sudden she pulls out a violin and proceeds to like sing it like Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, where it's just like all of a sudden it's like country crooning, and then it like gets more effect. Then no one left alone, and it's like going nuts and stuff, and all those little Harfoots with their like little short things are just dancing around, and you're like, whoa, it's got this Mary Pippin energy up in this piece, and they're like, man, like Sadek should have gone a while ago. You can't read a map, but you know how to bring the party when you're trying to bring the heat, trying to remind us of the people that we lost, the ones we carry with us, you know, in our hearts and stuff. So I couldn't decide though. Isildur going emo out of nowhere would just be really hilarious. But you could imagine a way that she's just like, let's bluegrass the recitation of names. Oh yeah,
and the Harfoots, you know, because bluegrass has roots in like Irish folk music and stuff, which in the Harfoots very, very Irish. Tom Webster, our friend, texted me, and he said, Waldrig adapting Not Like Us, I'm assuming by Kendrick Lamar, to be anti-Elven. So we're keeping it hip-hop, and we're taking an awesome, fantastic song and just, you know, making it anti-Elven, you know, pointy boots, knife ears, all of the elven slurs.
Well, but what if Waldreg was going to like go nasty at elves, but what if like all of a sudden he was like a crooner, where like out of nowhere, like, because it needs to be something as crazy as all of a sudden Bombadil showing up and singing. Like, if an orc, a big old troll can generate some Megadeth, then you're not surprised. Like all of a sudden Waldreg, because he obviously spits the hardest game in all of Middle Earth. Everyone knows this. That's why they didn't talk back when he's trying to lay down the law at the pub, because they're like, whoa, Waldreg spits game. But if all of a sudden it was like boom, ding, 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 and all of a sudden his face shifts, because we know Jeff, great actor from Australia, has it in him, and he's like, pointy ears tracking how sharper our knives they can go to Mordor, choke on the salt that I made. Yeah. Like doing stuff like that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Out of nowhere. And when he ends, there's like a brief pause, and everyone else in there doesn't know what to do. Just like the Hobbits, the first time they interacted Tom, they were just like, whoa, what was that? And then he's just like, have you heard of Sauron, boy? Have you heard of Sauron?
It's in wartime, Waldreg, hip hop, anti-elven. Peacetime, after Mordor is set, straight crooner mode. Crooner mode.
Yeah, but not like peak crooner, more like late Sinatra, where you had to have the words in big font.
Right.
But he just had like a legacy of straight up vibing that like, because that Waldreg Riz is so big, people just like hear perfection no matter what he brings.
Oh yeah,
it's all about that stage presence. And Waldreg, he obviously knows how to work a cleaver and a microphone.
He knows how to read between the lines too. I mean, he knew that a Rondir and not Muriel. What's her name? She'll be dead in season 2. Spoiler alert.
Arian? The one that was like Isildur's sister?
No, his love interest from the Southlands.
Bronwyn. Yeah.
But, even before, like, Waldreg was able to read between the lines because he's smooth like that. He's I see. He's like, I know what you're putting down, Arondir. I know what you're doing, planting the seeds.
Yeah, he's got that Middle Earth Rat Pack energy. Oh man. So which of the characters that are not likely to be in this season or here's a question: how are the Harfoots going to show back up, or do you think we really won't see them the whole season?
I think we're going to see Eleanor. I think we're going to see her with the stranger and Rune.
Well, yeah,
I think.
But what about like Poppy?
I don't know yet. I feel like Poppy is probably going to show up there because they were so like she was basically the Frodo or the Sam to her Frodo type of a deal. So I can't. I think they might even do like a thing where Nori tried to go off on her own, and Poppy's going to do the whole like, of course you are, and I'm coming with you type of a thing. And so we'll see her pop up, but we get the. Oh shoot! The not the Harfoots, the stores. We're gonna see the stores, which are also kind of another like proto Hobbit subspecies or something, and so they're more open to being close to water. I don't think they're as nomadic. There's people on here who have references that can be more honest about it, but I feel like the Harfoots are a lot more nomadic, a lot more afraid of water, and the Harfoots are more open to establishing themselves near water beds or bodies of water, rather. So I think we're probably not going to see as much of like Sadik and those Harfoots. We might get a flashback to like Nori's parents worrying about her, maybe, but I think they're probably going to, throughout the season, just kind of sprinkle like the different types of hobbits throughout the seasons, and focus more on Nori and Poppy. Probably that's my guess.
Yeah, I just hope they figure out a way for Poppy to show back up. Have you seen? Because I have all this stuff as much on mute on social as possible. Have you seen Poppy at?
Oh, yes,
pictures?
She's been on all the pictures. She's been at all the viewing. She's been at the cons. So she's got to be there.
All right, because now I'm a pushover for this. Like, all it takes is a Christmas commercial after I became a parent where, like, there's a family involved and I tear up, or, you know, but every time I've rewatched this thing, the when Nori and Poppy are talking and you're my best friend and blah, 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 like, we'll see each other again and all that kind of stuff. I'm just like, oh, that and Largo, the dad.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the one that twisted his ankle. And he's like, oh, I didn't get to tell you anything. And then she proceeds to list off all the Harfoot sayings. And he's like getting all emotional. And then Marigold, the mom, is like, she's like, I'll be safe. And she goes, no, you won't. You'll be bold. And I'm like, oh, come on. Just don't even. You got all that Hobbit love, supportive energy. But then you also have like the parent version on top of the friend energy. And I'm like, that would be like if Sam was running around and the gaffer had like kind and uplifting things he remembers.
Instead of calling him a ninny hammer.
Yeah, he's like, the gaffer shows up when he's trying to give Gollum a hard time. He's like, well, like the gaffer said, you know, and all of a sudden he's like the gaffer said, when whey bread's not the worst thing you can have 10 days in a row.
Dude, the Harfoots literally are a community of green flags. Like, everything about them throughout the whole series, you're like, green flag, green flag, green flag. Like, there's nothing toxic about the Harfoots. Except maybe Sadik sometimes. He can be a little patriarchal. Patriarchal.
It's those sideburns, man. You can't, like sideburns, they look cool when you got cool sideburns like Sadik. But then things get out of hand. But the one that was like the most sus was Malva, who ended up in charge. But then once the stranger saved her, and it was like she had a bigger imagination. Right. Saved her from the wolves, and then she's still just not gifted for leadership because she didn't know which way to hold a map.
Yeah,
but you know, Nick, you may say, "Whoa, that's just fiction," but in my experience, even like democracies with public education systems can find it attractive to nominate and vote for people that probably don't know how to use a map. And perhaps, like, let's say that a hurricane was going somewhere and actual meteorologists told him where it was going and he made something up. He wouldn't go, oh, my bad, like, this isn't what they said. He would just take a Sharpie and redirect the map and expand it in front of everyone and, like, not flip the map over. He would just mark on it and think that works. It's like, so, like,
I mean, and then say nuke it, you know, just nuke it. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So what do I know? I don't know. But that doing junk like that reminds me more of a Numenor plot line than a Harfoot one.
Yeah.
And Farazan has the coolest beard. That's just how it is.
100%.
That beard and locks combo. If you were doing Zaddy rankings, Rings of Power character, like he's going to go for it, even though, we aren't really sure that Sauron, on the hot Sauron, has had children, because other than, I guess orcs, but Farazan has that zaddy energy where, like, even though, you sit there and you look at Isildur and you're like, what a handsome young man,
Right.
Your dad, Elendil, he's a looker. Like, he's got big
100%.
zaddy energy and stuff, but he just seems more conflicted, too much, overthinks things, right? Like, he's a bit of a pushover sometimes.
It's true. He's conflicted, like you said. He's lacking the reserve to push forward. And Farazan, I think Farazan and then Adar are like the top zaddies.
Yeah,
like they're ready to get shit done.
Yeah. I don't know what the Orruk version of Grinder is, but Adar is very popular.
Here's a difference: is that our Farazan goes to like the RNC, and that's where he gets his grinder on, and Adar's like, I've been open this whole time. Like, I'm ready to mingle.
No. Okay, one other question about Farazan. This is a real one. So they're bringing the timeline in, right? So the Second Age, so much of what's going to happen in the Rings of Power seasons, like, to not be confusing, right, and make it more of a story, stuff that happened over like 1,000 years is happening over the lifetime, so that creatures that don't have serial longevity, like elves, you're like, oh, there's Farazan, and he's going to be here. But he's, I think, the fifth of the ever increasingly bad leaders of Numenor before they take a bath. And I wonder, I can't remember the order now, but one podcast I was listening to was like, well, what if the 5 bad kings, they basically have him do each of those kings kind of like increasingly bad turns each season, because you have like 5 leaders in a row and they get worse. And they were like, well, what if he's just doing them till it gets to his in the 5th season, where he's like Farazan doing Farazan things. So then if that's happening, we're actually going to see like the slow negative trajectory of Numenor. So it makes more sense when the judgment happens. Just the idea that it might not be like he's Farazan as we think he is, right, in the text the whole time, then there might be more complexity on the whole story down. So I was like, that could be interesting.
Yeah, I'd have to know if they're going to do any flashbacks. They definitely are with Sauron, but for the timeline, which is so different, is that with the sack of Eregion and the construction of the Rings of Power, and then eventually the One Ring, that all happens between 1500 and 1600 Second Age. Okay, 1590 is when the 3 Rings of Power are constructed by Celebrimbor. So we're talking about like in the books, Celebrimbor does that by himself. He might not do it by himself, but he does it when Sauron is not present. So Sauron doesn't know about the One Rings in the 3 Elven rings in the books, but in the
right, and they come last in the books.
That's right.
The Elven rings are made last in the books, first in the show series.
That's right. And then 1600, 10 years later, is when Sauron makes the One Ring. Okay. Our Farazan doesn't come into power until somewhere around 3000, 3100 Second Age. So we're talking a huge gap. So the sack of Eregion has already happened, the founding of Rivendell, etc. But they're kind of bringing these two together for story's sake. Tar Palantir is right before our Farazan, and Tar Miriel, so Miriel, is the daughter who becomes the queen. And I don't know how they're going to work this, but our Farazan basically marries her to take over the throne.
Without a lot of agency involved.
Without a lot of agency. Yeah, it's pretty gross. But before Tar Palantir, the old man who's kind of going crazy, the old king in the tower and the Rings of Power show, there's been a long history of kings. Like I said, maybe even 1,000 years of kings being terrible. Okay, that they're cutting off the elves progressively. They're denying the Valar. They're becoming more isolated and becoming more colonial minded, imperial minded. And Tar Palantir comes in and he's like, hey, we need to restore the elf friends. We need to go back to the old ways. But it's basically too late. Like Numenor itself, as far as like its fabric, is just too corrupt. And of course, our Pharazôn comes over and takes over and makes that happen and increases that, or brings that corruption to a culmination in his final ruling of Numenor. So I don't know if they do flashbacks, we might see that slow progression. But if we just stick with Tar Palantir, who we're going to learn, we have already learned, is already committed to the elves, they may just
Muriel's father, if people aren't following, the guy that just died at the end of season 1.
The old king, right at the last episode, who goes nuts. Yeah. Long beard.
Irian, the Isildur's sister, goes up to get his visage to like be one of the people that possibly makes the sculpture,
right?
And then he talks to her like she's Muriel about what he saw when he was touching his stone, and then
she goes to look at the Palantir.
Yeah, that's the glowy ball.
Yeah, and so if they don't go, it's gonna look like a really quick transition. They'll probably make it a little slower with our Pharazôn, but I think it'll really be from we believed in the elves to we're corrupt and we hate the elves now. But if they do flashbacks, we may see some of that more complex development. So I'm not sure actually how they're going to go about that.
Mm-hmm. So the last thing that I like kind of wonder about is last year we had these 3 characters: the Dweller, the Nomad, the Aesthetic, the ones that turned to moths.
Oh yeah,
after their encounter with the stranger, who are from Rune, and that's about all we know. So if you were tasked with setting up a whole plot line where all you got are 3 moth peeps searching around for Sauron, and they're obviously coming from somewhere, seeking Sauron, and all that kind of stuff. Like, what is it you think they have to work on, and exactly how big do the showrunners, like, how big of space do they have for their imagination on the plot lines where there really isn't as much to go on? Like,
it's a lot. It's a lot. And, what we get in what people, who kind of reacted negatively against the show is that they're like, where are these people coming from the East in Rune? Like, this has nothing to do with it. And that's not true. That Tolkien very briefly, but talks about how there was basically like cults in the East. Okay. And these weren't just like, oh, they kind of worship or whatever. These are like full on cults, mystics, kind of the whole conspiratorial, like satanic kind of cult type of stuff. And so when we get a lot of room for people to play with that, to be like, okay, what happens when there are maybe fallen beings that are still hanging out with humans, okay, and the way that Tolkien terms that is just capital M, men. So what happens, are these Maya, or are they men/humans that have channeled the dark energy of Morgoth, by extension Sauron, and are trying to do Sauron's will by being moth peeps? Because we're already seeing the humans in the Southlands rise up against, for Sauron under the banner of Adar. So there's a lot of room. So I think we're really going to see them explore what like these cults are like in the East, and maybe even see a more fleshing out of like who are the Easterlings, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential there. And I remember maybe a couple of years ago, one of the times when I was doing my reread of Lord of the Rings, and was paying more attention to the appendices, and then started reading some Tolkien books and stuff. At some point, I remember putting together that everything that was going on in Lord of the Rings, there's a whole nother side of the story where, like, there are these big battles that dwarves are all involved in. There's all this stuff going on in the other parts. Like, that the narrative of Lord of the Rings is kind of like, you know how when people are like, here's the Eastern Front and the Western Front of this big war in Europe. But then there's also like the whole Asian part of World War II and stuff that's going on. And then you realize that, this is also playing out where the different nations and the Axis and Allies are battling in their colonies and shipping lanes and stuff, that Tolkien had this whole big picture running out. And because the narrative of the Return of the King and the Hobbits to do this, you get this one particular element. But if all these other things hadn't been going down, there would have been way more baddies at these battles, and there would have Sam and Frodo would have been found out, and all this kind of stuff. And so to me, one of the things that I hope that Rings of Power does well, especially if the two wizards are the blue wizards, and they end up battling, is to like let us know you've loved this story, like, and you know how that goes down here, but there's this whole other world where, like, the problems of Morgoth, who's the original big baddie, generates. It has this whole other story going on in a part of the world that doesn't get centered in our story, and we're going to let you in on it, because in the Third Age, Gandalf shows up to get the hookup of the ring and the mission from Círdan. And then you got Galadriel and Elrond rocking their rings, and these are the people you know. But then there's this whole other thing. And so when you rewatch the trilogy next time, remember, there's giant battles going on elsewhere that enable everything you're seeing, right? And so like D-Day only worked because there were all these other things that were distracting and moving stuff around. And if the show sets up where you realize, they had to do time crunch, and possibly there's a folk story where you triple stamp to double stamp around the Mithril and the Cimmerils, but also like the story Tolkien gave is so much more complex. Yeah. And now you get to see, like, what does the residue of Morgoth, how does it get expressed in another culture, in another people? I think we saw some of it, right? Like when you're looking at how in the Southlands, Arondir as an elf notices and comes to trust a different humanity via Bronwyn and Theo and such that the other elves didn't see. Now, what happens in a place where the elves aren't kind of like the stewards of the peace, and the energy of evil festers in different ways? Like, that would be really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see, Gary's been on here putting in some comments, but he said some deep backstory here. This is just fine creative work. And if one of the reasons why I tell people, like, if you love Lord of the Rings, watching the movies, which is great, but like the books, especially in the appendices and some of the deeper stuff, you learn about like the complex storytelling and like those pieces that fall into place. Like in the appendices, during the War of the Ring and Lord of the Rings, there's two battles that Lothlorien fights and Dane Ironfoot, the dwarves, fight. And if they don't fight those battles, like you said, then Gondor and the Rohan can't successfully go to the Black Gate to distract Sauron and his forces for Frodo and Sam. And one of the things, too, that you were talking about all this stuff, and you kind of hinted at it, talking about these cultures that don't get centered, is that especially post Peter Jackson, that a lot of this stuff that even Tolkien did accidentally is just that he coded the South, which is near North Africa, the East, Middle East, and then even orcs as black or even as Asian. And there's this, it's kind of coded as in like anything that's not white European is like uncivilized and evil. And I think what the showrunners are trying to do is that they're trying to address that critique and be like, this is a real thing. They've done that with the orcs, right? The way that their orcs are portrayed are not black coded in the way that we see that in kind of modern, in the past 20th and 21st century film.
So you get the death ritual in episode 3 in the first season, where Adar kills the guy, removes his chest plate ceremonially, and then when Adar and Arondir have the talk, you realize their origin story, and then Adar talks to Galadriel, and it's like, we are both come from the one sacred fire.
Exactly. Yeah, and Tolkien wrestled with this in his life, where later on, where he's like, oh, shit, like, if creation is inherently good, like, orcs have to have the potential to be good, okay? And so he wrestled with this and didn't have time to deal with the metaphysics. But which it'll have limitations, because Patrick McKay and I can't remember the other guy are white Mormon boys from the United States. So, but I think they're trying to address those critiques and trying to honor, like, the Southlands and the Easterlings and Rune, which were directly inspired by North African and Middle Eastern cultures, and trying to like actually not caricature them, which I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So far, it seems like there's some critiques on how the Borrowites are coded, but we'll see. But anyway, I just wanted to make people aware that dynamic is real and has been especially a huge focus on Tolkien's work in the past 20 years, especially in adaptations. Yeah.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, Nick is active like in Tolkien studies and in Malorn Journal and such like that. So, and if you're interested in it, there's lots of us talking to people
Hell yeah.
about these things. Well, all right. So we can wrap up now, but if there's anything else you want to say about, while I tell everyone next week we will do this at the same time, except that we will be having just received 3 episodes. And now personally, I wish you just got one a week, because it's easier to watch it multiple times before we hang out and talk about it.
Right.
But like I have a servant's heart. And so what I'm going to do is just watch it all 3 episodes multiple times, so we can talk about it.
Amen. Amen.
And, yeah, so you're all invited. We still have like 130 some people on the stream right now. So
awesome.
You're all invited back next week. And feel free to send us takes. You can feel free to reach out in advance. But also you can, join live and chat it up. I enjoy talking with Nick because we're friends, but also I love talking about Tolkien. And one of my favorite things is, I don't have a PhD in it, so I don't have to have all the answers all the time, but I do love it quite a bit. And there's a different kind of joy if I talk about Tolkien or the Lakers, because I don't have to know everything and I have to have read it. and have thought about it a billion times. No, I'm just going to watch the show a few times. And I have read lots of Tolkien, but you know what I mean? I don't have a graduate degree in it. So I completely dig it. And if the soundtrack is a moderately accurate lure for this season, it's going to get better. And since this is a Amazon thing, Wheel of Time season 2 was extravagantly better than Wheel of Time season 1.
Really? I have
other, high fantasy type show.
Right.
Season 1 of Wheel of Time was difficult. Season 2 was like solid.
Okay.
And it got so much better. That if the same incremental happens of like the post-COVID shooting for quality, large battles, the kind of responsiveness to like the input fans are giving, then I think we could be pleasantly surprised.
Agreed. Like I just echo everything you said. Just as friends, and like it's hard to find Tolkien peeps that want to nerd out as hard as we nerd out together, and like you said, just moving into season 2 and just like ready for the level up.
I know. So
I'm going on an adventure.
And then when we hang out next time, we're gonna
Give me the meat and give it to me raw.
And when we get done,
it comes in pints.
What? Oh yeah! Look at that! Oh, that's what I'm talking about. There's nothing quite like drinking and your name shows up on the screen.
Courtesy of Trip Fuller.
So with that, we'll see you all next week. And thank you, all of you that hung out. You know what you get. You know what your reward is. The Horn of Gondor.